Obviously, Nick, when you look at a fight like this coming up, and this feels like a smaller card, if you will, but certainly Sergei Pavlovich is a guy that feels like he's a fast tracker right now in the heavyweight division. And a guy like Curtis Blaydes, who has been one of those guys so close, hasn't been able to quite get to the top of the spear here in the heavyweight division. He is a 170 favorite right now. We're seeing at DraftKings. Pavlovich right now, the comeback at 145 plus $1.45. What did you open this number at here at Circa? And have you seen any distinct changes here before we get to fight night here on Saturday?
We not too crazy yet, but I did open it at minus 160 for Blaydes, a little bit shorter than the overall market. It was like minus 170-ish, and now it is at minus 170. So it caught up to the market. We did get some sharp action both ways here, but originally it was on the Blade side. Now we're getting some Pavlovich action back from sharps as well. So this is going to be one of those fights where we have a lot of split opinions, a lot of two-way sharp action is going to come in. And I think it's going to kind of hover around where it is right now. I don't think it's going to fly over 200 or drop closer to a pick. I think it's going to still hover around that range right now.
And Nick, these are two of the bigger guys in the division now, both right around, 265 for Blaydes, about 257, close to 260 for Sergei. When you look at the total, and again, in a main event, you're going to have the prospects of going 5. The marketplace is saying it's not going to go 5, right? Because you're looking at this now. Very rarely do you see a total at, say, a round and a half. You can get plus money, plus $1.45, if you think these big boys can get you 7.5 plus minutes. What have you seen there? And I guess you could go, if you like the Blade side, maybe you lean towards the over. And if you like the Pavlovich side, maybe you think he gets out of there, gets Curtis out of there in relative quick time.
There's going to be nothing but steam on that under, I think, the entire way. Now, of course, there's going to be some sharp action probably coming back in at some point on the over, because the overs tend to be the sharper sides in most cases. But in this spot here, man, it's very difficult because the conflicting styles that you have. These guys are both finishers. Blaydes, of course, known as the wrestler. He's going to look for those takedowns. But once he gets you to the ground, he has some nasty ground and pound, and he has the ability to finish the fight there. And that on the other side of it, Pavlovich is one of the most dynamic and explosive strikers on the feet, and we've seen Blaydes get clipped and put out. So if anybody can knock a guy like Curtis Blaydes out once again, it's a guy like Pavlovich. So I think they kind of conflict, and they're kryptonite to each other, if that makes sense. That's why you're seeing the total get steamed on the under. I don't think this is going to go 7.5 minutes, to be honest with you, because I just don't think if Pavlovich gets on his back, he's going to get finished before it gets to round 3, or before it gets over that 1.5 mark, I should say, into round 2 or whatnot. And then I think the other way around, if Blaydes isn't able to get the takedown, he's going to get sparked right before he gets there. So it's going to end early. I do think it probably ends under 7.5 minutes. And the steam is kind of indicating that as well. And I think it's probably right.
Pavlovich does have that 4-inch reach advantage, and plus 145 right now, DraftKings as the dog. We know that Curtis, if there's a kryptonite for somebody that might be one of the best wrestlers in the heavyweight division, it's maybe the chin. I mean, look, Derek Lewis knocks a lot of guys out. He easily won that first round against Derek back in the day, and then he gets stopped in the second. Is there a danger for Curtis to eschew the wrestling and stand toe-to-toe with a guy like Pavlovich, who feels like he's really on the comeuppance here in the heavyweight division?
In my opinion, that's Curtis not using IQ, and I give him credit for decent IQ. That's him not using IQ and going to fight the other man's fight. The young man Pavlovich is 14 of 16 wins his first round, and all his UFC fights first round finish. The total in this fight 1.5. Really indicative to me of some Pavlovich correlation. Now, that said, as I handicap this fight from the Blaydes point of view, I'm telling him, let's get to round 2. So hug him, maul him, stay away from him, run from him, do anything you got to do to get this into round 2, because at that point in time, what we do know is Blaydes can wrestle. He's got great cardio. He can go all day, and he has to keep from getting touched against a power guy like Pavlovich. And we don't know what Pavlovich brings into round 2 or beyond. I'm certain that the Blaydes camp wants to take this thing into 2 or beyond, and Pavlovich doesn't want to see that, in my opinion.
Oh, I think that's exactly the correlated play there, Lou. That's exactly the way I see it, too, that if you like the Curtis side, and he's minus $1.70 favorite here, that it could be a correlated play to the over, plus $1.45 right now, because unless he absolutely gets down there and Pavlovich has nothing off his back, if Curtis can get that takedown, then maybe to your point, Lou, he just gets into the gas tank, right? That he looks to get in the gas tank of the younger Pavlovich, who's been steamrolling guys in the first round. And then if that over comes into play, maybe even the live number, you've got to really like Blaydes' chances if he can extend this into a second round and beyond. Is that the way you're looking at it from the favorite side?
Exactly. I think that if Blaydes can get this into round 2, then the fight becomes more his style, and the questions all lie with Pavlovich. And then we get to see what kind of cardio he has, what kind of chin he has. Can he get up off his back? You do not want Blaydes to take you down and get on top. And I don't care who you are. Now, that said, the concern for Blaydes has to be speed, power, explosion. This kid's a monster, and I think he's for real. And if Ngannou and Derek Lewis were able to touch Blaydes, I look at Pavlovich as faster, more explosive than those two, surely faster. And so there's risk there for Blaydes as well.
So Curtis coming in as a solid favorite here, minus $1.70 against Sergei Pavlovich. You know this very well. We know what Curtis Blaydes wants to do. That's wrestle, right? Again, in my conversations with Curtis through the years, he hasn't always cared about, looking the prettiest out there. He doesn't mind making it a grind. Is that the only way you see him beating Pavlovich if he is to get his arm raised in victory?
Yeah, but I worry about that being the game plan. First and foremost, I really wish we saw the end result of his fight with Tom Aspinall.
Right.
We were all ruined with a great headlining fight. He wins the fight 15 seconds into it, injury, torn ACL for Tom Aspinall, because it would have been very interesting to see how he would have done against a younger, athletic, powerful striker that's got a good, Brazilian jiu-jitsu game. Pavlovich, also it kind of falls into that category, not in the Brazilian jiu-jitsu standpoint, but a wrestling standpoint. He just hasn't shown it yet. I mean, this is a guy that was a combat sambo, perfectionist before he got into mixed martial arts, and he started knocking people out. And I think you have to dismiss his UFC debut. I mean, throwing in there against the Wolves, against Alistair Overeem, that's no easy task. And I think that the big bright lights got to him. But what has he done since then? He's knocked out Derek Lewis. He knocked out Pai Tuivasa, both in under a round, and looked impressive in doing so. So I'm very curious to see what Curtis Blaydes is going to do. Is he going to try any stand-up, which obviously I think would be a recipe for disaster, or is he going to wrestle, which we haven't seen Pavlovich have to force to do it, but he's got it in his back pocket. So I think you're seeing where I'm headed.
Yeah.
I think there's value early on in the week with Pavlovich, just because maybe he's not known from a name standpoint, but he's been in there with some of the top heavyweights we currently have in the UFC, and it's taken him around to dust them both off.
Yeah, I'm fascinated too by the total, because we talk about correlated plays a lot, right? So because Pavlovich has been getting guys out of there early, right, in those first rounds, really not getting into the cardio at all, we know that Curtis does have that wrestling background and that cardio. So I think in a perfect world, he'd like to extend this. But right now, you can get good money for a 5-round potential main event here at over a round and a half at plus $1.50s we're seeing out there, plus $1.45s. So is that the only way that Curtis wins, is by extending instead of making this a quick night? And if Pavlovich, if we don't know about the cardio, does that worry you? And maybe you hop in live if this fight all of a sudden goes deep into a second round?
Yeah, I think that's the direction. If you want to look at the total, you definitely look, I believe, at the over, understanding that Curtis Blaydes' method and way to victory is a grind, is getting the takedowns and either getting a late finish or something into those championship rounds. So I would agree with value there. But however, if you're on the Pavlovich side, yeah, you question the cardio because you just haven't seen it. You don't know it. Is he going to be able to handle not only a 5-round fight, but a 5-round fight against Curtis Blaydes?
Right.
So I think right now, as it stands on Tuesday, I've seen Curtis Blaydes get knocked out. I've seen him run into that uppercut of Derek Lewis. I've seen him obviously get stopped by Francis Ngannou. And I just worry that he's going in there against a guy that's going to be maybe fighting for the championship at some point very soon. So that's why I like right now Pavlovich plus money, but I certainly agree with the over at 1.5 as a safer play to kind of hedge your bet, if you will.
When you look at the main event, and I am fascinated by this fight, obviously Curtis Blaydes always feels like he's been nipping on the heels of getting a title shot. Sergei Pavlovich now feels like that guy. That if he keeps rocketing up the heavyweight division, it's going to be Pavlovich that could soon be in line for a title shot. Do you look at it like a title eliminator? And do you think Blaydes should be a, $1.70 betting favorite as he is right now?
So first of all, I think one of these two should be fighting for the title instead of Stipe, if we're being completely honest. As much as I love Stipe Miocic, the rematch just doesn't make sense to me. So I'd already put one of them in there. So yes, this should be a title eliminator. And I actually do like Curtis Blaydes at this price. While Pavlovich has clearly gotten the hands and he's really shown he can box, nobody has really tried to wrestle Sergei Pavlovich outside of two people. Shamil Abdurakhimov, who went 0 for 1 in takedown attempts. And really, if you look at that takedown entry he threw a kind of a spammed out overhand right, wound up in on like a body lock, but didn't really work for the legs or anything like that. It was a really half-hearted attempt. And then you look at Alistair Overeem in his debut, who not only took him down, but beat the living hell out of him once he was down. and if you can't get out from underneath Alistair Overeem, I got some bad news when you're about to fight Curtis Blaydes. And same thing with, if Shamil Abdurakhimov is getting in on a body lock and getting inside of your striking range, I really think that Curtis Blaydes is going to have a way easier time, and he is going to get in on the leg. So, yeah, I really like Curtis Blaydes here. Shooting takedowns, I wouldn't be surprised if he finished him with ground and pound, because he has gotten way more vicious in that ground and pound as of late, too.
Oh, yeah. Alistair Overeem can attest to that, certainly from Curtis Blaydes. Hey,
Yeah.
when I look at this, too, at the total, Dan, it is fascinating to me, because I think what you just alluded to there with Curtis, if he does, in fact, finish those takedowns, it's not laying on a guy. He is going to go for stuff, right? He's going to look to ground and pound. Don't know if he'll look for a sub necessarily. But right now, the over 1.5, you get solid plus money if Curtis gets control, tries to get into the gas tank of Pavlovich. Conversely, though, I guess the danger would be that he could finish him a little bit quick, because we haven't seen Pavlovich really go deep into the night in any fight. Is that playable for you at plus $1.45 to get over 7.5 minutes?
I definitely think it is. And for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think if you're on the Curtis Blaydes side, you should be on the over as well. Because Curtis Blaydes, if he's going to win this, I don't think he's going to get him out of there super fast. Like, the only person that Curtis Blaydes went in there and got out in, extremely quick fashion was Chris Daukaus. And that was, that was a Curtis Blaydes we had never seen before. He's not going to go in there and do that to Pavlovich. He's not going to go in there and try to do that to Pavlovich. I think the only people who are betting the under here are the people betting Pavlovich too. Which is kind of weird why the odds would be negative 170 on Blaydes and then, juice to the plus or plus money on the over rather. That just seems odd to me. So yeah, I like Blaydes and I like the over here.